Hello, welcome to this Crypto Professor update video on Yearn Finance. Now, if you've been watching Yearn Finance over the past 2 weeks or so, you would have seen two very different attitudes to this particular cryptocurrency. The first would have been fear, uncertainty and doubt as the price came down from my original video on $11,000 to $7,500 in the space of around about 3 days. Then the price started ascending all the way up to 18,000, sold off for a little bit, and then continued up towards the 30,000 that we've seen in the last 48 hours. Now, those are two different types of emotions. The first is fear. The second is exuberance, with people pushing the price higher and higher and higher, ultimately hitting a high level of resistance and a strong level of resistance at the $30,000 region. We're presently selling off from that and coalescing, and I'm using this video to isolate when I think the next long entry is likely to be and what price will be best in order to enter long into this highly volatile asset. I will also be mentioning throughout this video that I think this trade that is immediately available to anyone who is bold enough to take it is actually a short, and I will be discussing the parameters for that short later on in this video. But first of all, let's focus on what is actually happening now to Yearn today. We've got a market cap of $688 million and a 24-hour trading volume of $846 million. So the trading volume is around about 1.2 times the total market cap. That tells me a couple of things. That tells me that there are a lot of whales in the market who are trading this very, very frequently. And there are a lot of perhaps institutions who are starting to take interest in this and therefore have lots of trading volume to go behind. There was a story in the news about a Yearn Finance whale moving 2,546 Yearn Finance onto a centralized exchange that happened to be Binance. And theoretically, they may have been looking to liquidate. I've been doing a little bit of digging, and I don't think that person, who he or she is, has actually sold their Yearn Finance yet. So there's still this overhang of an incredibly bearish sentiment, obviously taking a good almost 10% of the market max supply in that transaction. I also want to note the total value locked is 427 million. And that's a ratio of 1.6 to the market cap. I'm actually going to go into a little bit more detail about the total value locked on this. Now you can see over the course of its history, we've been almost $1 billion in total value locked in Yearn Finance. We're currently settling around about the $450 million range. If I look at the last 30 days, we can actually see that increase reflected in the price as well as the total value locked from the beginning of the month around about $350 million to $450 million recently, and then tailing off slightly as we've only just started this descent down from the peak of $30,000. And there'll be people obviously taking their profits out of Yearn Finance to collect profits on their trading. I also want to study where all the Yearn Finance is. This is a breakdown of every single Yearn Finance token and where they are. You can see that around about 25% is actually involved directly in staking, and they are getting rewards for holding their Yearn Finance in the vaults. And then around 25% is actually held on exchanges, either centralized or decentralized exchanges, going all the way down. And there are a total of 14,207 holders of Yearn Finance at the moment, and these are the top 1,000 you can see here on Etherscan. You'll notice that this is quite significant, and this total value lock staking will affect the bearishness of the asset, because obviously people who are locking their Yearn Finance in staking are doing it for the medium to long term. They're not doing it to trade. This volume here, the Binance and the SushiSwap volume, is actually more interesting from a trading perspective, and I'll be delving into those a little bit later in later series of videos in order to determine where the price data may be coming from, particularly looking for that individual who has the 2,500 Yearn. So let's look at some price data. Now I'm going to reformulate the Elliott wave analysis that I did in an earlier video to now reflect this 5-wave pattern that I think is complete. So we had a wave 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and the 5th wave terminated at around about $7,500. Now, in my previous video, I thought there may be a fourth wave here and a fifth wave further down. I now no longer think that's the case. I'm recategorizing this as a wave 1 pattern off the floor, which is 7,500. I no longer think the price is going to go below this 7,500 window. So if you got in anywhere around the $10,000 window that I was mentioning in my previous videos, well done, fantastic. I hope you've taken some profits up here. If not, take some profits now, because I think this is going to correct down to these aforementioned levels: 18,700, 16,000 and 12,300. Those are my 3 price targets where I'll be dollar cost averaging in again in order to collect proceeds for when this coin moves up towards the $36,000 or $44,000 range, which will happen when we should see a nice wave 2 pullback and then a wave 3 corresponding to hit these levels here. Okay, I'm going to delve a little bit in depth on this price action on a smaller time frame than a day chart in a second, but I just want to note where the RSI is and the perfect RSI levels that have indicated here with this particular cryptocurrency. We had oversold down here, perfect entry, and then we had overbought all the way up here, perfect exit. So if you're algorithmically trading this and you're using RSI, this is a really good indicator for that in order to tell when to buy and when to sell. Okay, so let's delve a little bit more in depth on our 4-hour charts. Notice we are now coming down nicely. We're at 40 on the RSI. We got a little bit more wiggle room to the downside, and on a 1-hour chart we are oversold, but at the same time we've still got a lot of movement, and also RSI on a 1-hour chart with the cryptocurrency is kind of begging the question as to why you're looking on that time frame with that technical, because it can be very, very misleading. But looking at the day chart, perfect level of analysis on that. Let's look now a little bit more in depth at where we are in terms of trading patterns on a 4-hour time scale. Now you notice that we are currently holding support above this EMA, which is the 54-hour EMA, and that corresponds roughly to the 7-day EMA that I had here. Okay, roughly speaking, 7 days is approximately the same as 50 times 4 hours, thereabouts. We've also got the 100-day EMA, or 400-hour EMA, I should say, down here, which actually really nicely corresponds between these 2 price levels. So this is my short target where I'm looking for a short entry if I were to be planning a short entry. Theoretically, this price could recover all the way up towards 28,500, and I would still expect it to come crashing down here at some point between these 2 prices. 21,671 would be my first primary target, then 19,400. I don't think pushing it down here any further would be a good idea, but taking profits swiftly on these 2 would be very good. And that's the pricing targets that I'm expecting. I don't think this is going to turn bullish anytime soon, and I think that if you do get an opportunity to short with these 3 prices, 28.5, 27.4 and 26.6, then do so if you're very keen on taking high risk trades or higher risk trades than entering long and hodling, for example, with a stop loss around about the $29,000 region. Because if we break the $29,000 region, we're continuing to ascend in this pattern, and the count or the technical analysis that I'm using here needs a refresh. Let's look at that trade in action. So if you're actually shorting here right now, where would you place your stop loss? Well, I place it the opposite side of this descending trend line here. Notice how this EMA is nicely respecting it. That's the 50-hour EMA here. We're currently bouncing off of the 200-hour EMA, and at the moment it's looking supportive. We could rally all the way from here to 25,000 without a hiccup, and that would mean that our short is still in action. I don't expect significant problems until we get down here about the $20,000 region, where we hesitated a little bit previously on this liquidity zone here. If we get there in the next 24 hours or so, I strongly suspect we will oscillate around this level for a considerable period of time. And this trend line goes all the way back to this bullish trend line here that we saw earlier. This is a bearish trend line, which goes all the way back here. and we will, if we break this bullish trend line, we will come down and test this support here at around the $17,000 region. Just want to draw your attention to this ADX, which is a trend analysis tool. It gives you the strength of the trend. The bearish trend now has a strength of around about 43. So that is quite strong. Anything above 25 is a strong trend in any direction. If we get above 50, then we should see this nice break here coming down to test the $17,000 to $18,000 region. Notice previously when we had the green over the red, we had a very strong trend here around about a similar level, 46, but this is an hour chart, so it's not terribly reliable. In order to get something a little bit higher time frame, we need to do this. Notice how strong this trend was here. That's a 56 trend, so that's a really nice strong trend there. Slightly less of a trend here, and also look at the divergence, slightly higher prices but weaker trend. So we already had slightly a warning that things were going to start to sell off around here, and we've obviously had this crossover on a 4-hour chart, which is a very, very positive sign, which means that we're likely to continue this descending trend for the foreseeable future. And obviously at 25, that is a strong descending trend. Notice once again the support, 54-hour support here. I expect to break that soon, and the 200 coming in down here at 17.7. So once again another tick in the box basically for those prices there. Finally, let's look at MACD. MACD crossed over nicely. Notice the divergence here. We had strong prices, ascending prices but slowly, representing low volume, and this came down nicely, so that's divergence there. So anyone who was on the ball there would probably be locking in profits at that point and not expecting to breach this high, and we didn't. In fact we did a double top, then we came down, and now we're selling off dramatically. These may cross, and this is obviously a 1-hour chart, so if these cross anywhere near this line, we will break and come down to the $17,000 to $20,000 region. On a 4-hour, we're very, very much coming down. Nice lots of volume there on the selling. We are coming down to, once again, these aforementioned levels here with this trend line bisecting them. So that's a nice level of sell-off there, and I would expect that to continue for the foreseeable future. On a day chart, we are still looking semi-bullish. We're starting to cross over, and if these cross over here, we could get our response all the way down to the aforementioned $12,000 region, which would be our ultimate entry point for this if we weren't dollar cost averaging. So if you're not looking to buy small portions of Yearn Finance at higher prices, waiting off until we see $12,000 would be the ultimate purchase, and that's only if we get a crossover on this MACD here, which at the moment doesn't look terribly likely. Notice the scale of that as well. We're only around about 2,000 around about here, but previously when we were all the way up at the peak, previous peak, we're up at 7,000. So this is weak, but it theoretically could cross over and go into the negative territory, in which case we'll get our drop down to $12,000. Let's look at the volume. Volume has sold off nicely along with this trend here. Once again, we did have some level of divergence. The volume came off here and actually settled down here, even though the price then did another spike. We then came all the way down here, and we're currently at a level of around about 12k, which is actually returning to the average of this over the past couple of days or so. If we zoom out on a larger scale, we can see that the volume is actually still extremely high for its history. It's not at the peak, but it's not anywhere near the average either. The average is around about probably about 30k, and we're currently at around about 70 or so on a day chart. So there's plenty of volume to come off here that we could see a drop down, and the sentiment is bearish on the volume as well. Great. If you've enjoyed this video, please mention it in the comments, what you liked and what you'd like me to focus on in future. If you've got any projects that you'd like me to take a look at, or any particular cryptocurrencies or tokens, I'll be very happy to take a look for you. Similarly, if you'd like to recommend any particular projects or any particular software or analysis tools that you use, I'm very happy to take a look at those as well. Otherwise, happy trading. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to get $25 of CRO completely for free, please sign up to Crypto.com using our referral link in the description on this video. The Crypto Professor likes feedback. If you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like it. If you'd like more of the same, please don't forget to subscribe. Or if you have questions, please post them in the comments and I'll endeavour to answer them for you. Thanks for watching.